right, we are live. Welcome to Encounters. This is where we just basically get together and talk about different encounters we've had with God and share from our hearts and see what happens. Sometimes it goes just crazy. I remember Barry Miracle. I think we were talking for maybe an hour and 20 minutes before he shared a story because we were in a flow, right? So,
Wow.
but Barry can preach anywhere, anytime. So. I love that guy. So if you guys don't know, this is Barry Adams. He's an awesome guy. He wrote the Father's Love Letter years and years and years ago, and we were actually talking about it just before he came on. And it's insane how far that has reached, and how many people have encountered that through one person. Like that's crazy. Like I thought I was cool because I had 2.5 million views on a TikTok video. So. You know.
That is cool.
Yeah, I was just birthing a teddy bear, so it wasn't spiritual. So I don't think there's a lot of kingdom influence there. But no, and I was telling you, I remember the first time I saw it really touched my heart, and then you ended up coming to the school that we had when I was an intern and teaching. And all of a sudden, like I remember this one night, man, it was like you were teaching, but it was like just the person of Jesus was there. The glory was there. We were getting drunk. It was probably the best night we had. Like it was,
Wow.
it was an amazing time. And even we just did the Glory Boys thing with some friends of ours. And once again, you just started sharing, just being you. And that's the thing that I like is whether we're, in the green room of the webcast or on, you're the same guy. And I really appreciate that. So thank you for coming on with me today.
Corey, I love you to bits, and as you know, I'm a little older than you, and I'm just you're the next generation that's just doing some amazing stuff. And like I said, in the green room as we talked, that the media stuff. The media is really the language of the culture that we're in, and I'm in my 60s now, so my language is a little stilted now compared to, what the language of kind of the next generation. But yeah, what you're doing with Encounters and on Friday nights and all the other stuff, I just think it's just totally awesome. And so I'm looking forward. I'm following you today, brother. Where you go, I will follow. So,
well, I think one of the first things would be like when you were writing the Father's Love Letter. I know we talked about a little tiny bit, but what was that like, that experience for you, just to actually be able to take scripture and put it in a way that it was like as if God was speaking?
It was quite interesting. I mean, I had no intention of what ended up happening with it. When it kind of went viral around the world, I did it as a sermon illustration when I was going to be speaking at my home church on the love of God. And what happened, the impetus for it was just me coming into a deeper revelation that Almighty God is my dad. And
come on.
I mean, I was a believer for 22 years, powerful revelation of Jesus, powerful revelation of the Holy Spirit. But, I had a theological understanding of God as a father. I mean, I thought I could, by this time I was serving as a full-time associate pastor, and I thought I probably could preach on God as a father, but it was an intellectual understanding. And it wasn't until, when he actually revealed that he was not just a father of all creation, he was my father. And that just turned me inside out. And when that revelation hit home, it was like, everything, it was like I put new glasses on. It was like I saw the scriptures different. And I've been a guy that honors the scriptures, I've memorized scriptures over the years, and I couldn't believe that after I came into this revelation of love, and that God loved me not because I did things to earn it or deserve it, but because I breathed. The scriptures started, it was like all these scriptures from Genesis to Revelation were starting to pop off the page, ones that I memorized, but I was seeing them different. So, it was like, oh, these scriptures are like they've always been there. And yet the grid in which I tried to grasp them was through a different mindset than that as being a much loved son. So one day in prayer, I just asked the Lord, I just said, Father, I'm just overwhelmed with all these scriptures. can you help me put some of them into one stream of thought? And it wasn't like the heavens opened up and I heard Charlton Heston's voice or anything else, but it was, I just in my heart, I just heard the Lord say to me, like, if you put them in the right order, they'll some of them, they'll form a love letter, and from me to the world. And so when I did that, I mean, again, it was just for a Sunday morning. I mean, I'm a newspaper guy. I had at 16, I graduated early from high school, and I ended up in the newspaper business in the advertising side. And I've always had a heart for media, but I kind of one-dimensional print media, right? That graphic design, that kind of thing, but nothing multimedia. And so, when I came into this revelation, and then all of a sudden it was like all these scriptures were just flowing quite easily. And again, it was just for a Sunday morning. And so I put it together, and it was like 50 passages of scripture. One of the things, Corey, that it was quite interesting, and some people might think, oh man, this is, how inspiring. Were you floating on clouds? Were there angels in the room? What happened? I mean, I had a huge struggle because of my, how much I honored the scriptures. I thought, like, I'm paraphrasing in the first person from God's perspective, his scriptures. And I'm going, like, can I do this? Am I allowed? Like, I'm scared, because I didn't want to do anything that would be, sacrilegious or dishonoring or anything else. So I went through that kind of situation with it. And then just, on January 1999, at the end of just talking about God as a father, I just said, well, I just have this 8-minute video that I want to play for you guys. And it was the Father's love letter. And back then it wasn't the narration. It was the text. But the music was from Brian Dirksen. He had a song that really resonated with me, Faithful Father. And so, I got permission and everything else to use that soundtrack as the first version of the Father's love letter. And I was surprised, because when I played it, and our church was, I don't know, probably 300-400 people at the time. And when I started to play it, just watching people watch it, it was like people were just becoming emotionally unglued in their chairs. And, one little girl ran into her mom's arms, and she wasn't in a close relationship with her natural father. Her mom was a single mom, and her mom was concerned, says, "What's wrong?" And something to the effect, and it's not a direct quote, but it was like something she said, "I didn't think I had a dad. And God just told me that he's my dad." And she was sobbing, and this is a young girl. And so when I heard that, and then of course other people were having these very powerful interactions with the Father themselves, I just thought, well, if it touches people in our church, maybe it'll touch somebody.
Maybe.
On the internet.
Yeah,
so that was but that was the impetus for it. It wasn't like, I and even in the early days of that, it was I remember the Lord saying, do it for the one. Yeah, do it for one person. Because he said to me in my heart, he just said, every person who comes home gets their own party. Come on. Everyone. And so it was like, so that, and back in those days, I had no idea what was going to be coming down the pipe. So now I realize that, we're still doing it for the one, and we're hearing stories all the time. And it's still like, this is crazy. It's it was almost 22 years later, and we're still hearing stories. And
I saw that on the, and I was like, I can't believe it's that old.
Yeah.
Like, that's just wild. It still feels so like fresh for me. Oh. Like, and it's like, it's crazy. And like, I can't wait till we start to see just different aspects of art and creativity come into the church. Like, I've always thought it'd be so crazy to have like a digital Pixar kind of design team to take like visions and things like that and create them digitally.
Oh yeah.
Like, just because like some of the stuff like that comes out is just so wild. And like even take like a Bob Jones word or something and like digitally create what he's like articulating, right?
Absolutely.
But like, there's so much that we haven't really, like, for me, like the worship side of things was always attached to music. Where now I'm realizing that like my worship's more of an inward thing that I express through music. It comes out through songs and stuff because I'm a musician. But what if I'm a painter? What if I'm a preacher? Like, we don't really see those things as being the same, but I think they are. I think that the fact that you just took the time and listened and walked something out that was in your heart to do, that's where fruit comes from. It comes from the secret place.
Yeah.
You know, it comes from being like, is this right or not? I don't know. You know, like even I had done a song for my dad when he passed, and it was like I knew I wanted to write something, and it kind of just came, and it was really raw and like super real and not even like not candy coated at all. But I felt that it still showed how much I loved him. And so I was like, you know what, I'm just going to put it out the way it is. And that's probably the biggest traction I ever got off any of the songs I've written. And it's like trying to realize that I think we're in a really crazy time because everything that's coming out is perfect and polished and auto-tuned and music and edited and video. But yet when you go on YouTube, it's the girls singing it a cappella on an iPhone who has the most hits. It's like humans love that raw connection with someone. We love just the simplicity of someone's heart being shared. And if we could, as the church, start to see the trend and start to be like, you know what, people really don't care if we have a full stage full of lights. They care if we're authentic and real. Yeah. And not that that's wrong. I'm all for it. Hey, I'm a tech guy. The more gear I got, the better. Like I'll take all the lights. But it's like remembering that at the heart of it, it's still just the personal encounter with God that moves people, that brings people to the knowledge of love. Like it's the fact that you weren't doing it to be famous that made it awesome. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. No, and that's one of the things that, and I know that we would be right on the same page with this stuff. Is the fact that because I felt like a calling into ministry when I was 15. When I got saved, and I told my parents that I felt called to be in some form of ministry. But my only grid of ministry was pastoral. I thought, well, if you're going to be, if you're going to be in ministry, you have to be a pastor. And the day before I started my job in the newspaper business, I told my parents, and at 16, what does a 16-year-old kid know? But it was very prophetic. I said, this is going to be my Bible school. And I didn't realize I was such a slow learner because it took me 19 years to finish my Bible school. But what it did is like I was navigating media, right? And I was, all with dealing with, advertising and national advertising accounts and all kinds of things throughout the time. And God really wrecked my heart in this area of media. And I felt like I really wanted to find, my heart was always that we could find creative expressions of God's heart through different forms of media. So even in those days, it was like God was forming something. And then after 19 years, I leave and I go in a newspaper. I become a pastor full time, thinking, well, this is ministry. And it was like I was doing that. I did that for like 3.5 years, and it was like David putting on King Saul's armor, to go out against Goliath. I was like, man, this doesn't fit. Like, and I go, what else is there? So like this whole idea, what you're talking about is finding form, finding expression in who God made you to be, and in ways that are uniquely you. And one of the things that, and I realized the struggles I had even with the Father's Love Letter. And I think that's why one of the things that I'm very passionate about for people is because, I had to get some encouragement from my friends, not to play it on a Sunday morning, but to put it on the internet. It was like that's at another level of vulnerability, another level of kind of letting the cat out of the bag kind of thing. And I was like, can I do this? Am I allowed to do this? And so I was battling even insecurities and fears and all those things. And so for me, in retrospect, looking back 22 years later, I go like, what if I didn't? What if I said, no, I can't do that? I can't paraphrase scripture, or I shouldn't do that, or I shouldn't do that. I could have easily disqualified myself from that. I'm not saying God wouldn't have used somebody else or something else to do the same thing that he wanted. But the one thing that I really am passionate about is people guys out there, anybody who's watching or watching later, like if God is putting something in your heart, just be courageous with it. Don't just kind of hide it and be afraid, and just it doesn't mean that it's going to go to the nations, but just be you and just allow God to be seen through your creativity.
Well, and it's so crazy because we never know. You never know sometimes when God's gonna move. It's like I got invited. A buddy of mine, he invited me to come do worship with him at a camp, and it's like a reading program in Toronto that focuses on reaching like Tibetan kids and kids in that
Wow.
area. There's all sorts of kids, but mainly there's a large community of Tibetan people who come from Tibet. So Toronto is actually like the second largest gathering of Tibetan people besides Tibet.
Wow.
And yeah, it's pretty wild. And so I didn't know the guy, and the guy Jim, he used to have a thing called the Rock Cafe in London years ago, and it was like an outreach like years and years ago. And so I was just going to play guitar, and so but they were super awesome. They're like, bring your wife, your kids. We have like, it wasn't like a little cheap camp. Like we had a beautiful room. Like it was just crazy. So we get there, and Dave's like telling Jim about prophecy and the prophetic and stuff. And he's like, Corey does this, and so does Dave and his wife. And they come from like they had been in a TACF style stream church, and they'd gone through the prophetic and stuff, and probably even before that. But the crazy thing was the guy's like, yeah, cool, you're gonna do this, and like no joke, the first service, it was so crazy, the heart of God that poured out. Like it was just insane. I never encountered it, like so much of feeling the Father for people. Like it was like, it wasn't just a word, it was like you were speaking, like he was speaking through you, like as
Yeah.
if you were one with him. Like it was like to the point where like it got so nuts that kids were chasing me down everywhere. You know,
Wow.
they'd never seen anything like it, and like, and God was just being crazy, like details and journals and all sorts of stuff, to the point where like I couldn't even go swimming without 5 or 6 kids coming up to me for prayer. And
Wow.
we had this like revival break out in the camp. We had dressers moving across the room, so we'd go and pray and it would stop, and the kids are just like, how did it stop? Because they're used to the spiritual stuff, right? And so like to them, like this one girl had like migraines, and she knew it was from the spirit because it happens at night. And so I just came over and prayed for her for a few seconds and walked away. And like 2 days later, she's like freaking out because she hasn't had a migraine.
Wow.
And like it was honestly like a full blown
Man.
thing. And it was so powerful because there was this one moment, all of that to get to this. There was this one moment where this kid came up to me, and he just, because sometimes they come up to me with questions, and I would be like, like, because I'm not an oracle, I'm just a dude with a beard, and it was so funny. He just like, he was like so real, and he said, "Why does God hate me?"
Oh.
This little guy, and I just started bawling, and I'm like, "Why do you think God hates you?" Well, he was born small, right? Like everybody else his age is like double his size or whatever. And he said, "Why would God make me this way?"
Hmm.
And like, I was so grateful that the Holy Spirit thinks quicker than me, because he just like, I told him the story about the guy who was crippled, right? That it wasn't because of his mother or his father, but it was for the glory of God. And God showed me a bunch of other stuff about him, gave him a big hug. We had this beautiful moment.
Hmm.
But at the end of camp, one of the things about Tibetan culture is they don't stand out. So if you were to say like, how many people like blue, raise your hand, nobody would raise their hand, right? Because they're taught not to like stand out in the crowd. And so we had like 60, 70 kids come to know Jesus. And so Jim's like, how many kids like encountered Jesus this week? And like nobody's putting up their hand. And all of a sudden, man, like no joke, like it was coming out of a movie. The little kid stood on his chair and he said, "I did." And I
Oh.
just wept, man. I just wept because it was like, if everything was just for him,
Hmm.
it was so worth it. And to see him have such a real encounter that he now knew his job is to stand up and say yes.
Hmm.
Like that's why God made him, because he's the one who's going to stand up, like he's the one who's going to speak. Like it was wild. And I got to see him again after the camp, and yeah, it was cool. I love those moments where God like shows through.
Yeah.
And so like even with you, like, you know, you're struggling, like, should I do this? Should I not do this? And all of a sudden it reaches millions upon millions of people. And like, yeah, there's people who got bent out of shape, but there's millions of people who didn't, man.
Yeah.
And that's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Like just crazy unbelievable how powerful God can be through something you don't even know is going to be anything.
Well, and I think that's, that's all part of the joy of the journey, right? It's because we just don't know. I don't think it was. I think it was maybe Bob Jones that coined the phrase "Jehovah Sneaky," but it's just the idea that he surprises us, and he just, and I think because he can't be contained by our reason and our rationalization and our plans and purposes. There's one of the scriptures from Proverbs that is. I've reminded myself over the years, many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the Lord's purpose that prevails. And when we are able to kind of just trust our plans, that doesn't mean we don't plan, but that we trust in his bigger plan. And oftentimes he surprises us. And I think, and that's what we talked about, the creative. I think there's so much that the Father wants to do to unlock the creative in people's hearts. So they could just be, because when you think about it, God is the consummate creator. He's never made the same thing twice. Nothing, ever. Every snowflake, every blade of grass, every strand of DNA is a one-off original. God, he could replicate and duplicate, but he doesn't. He chooses to continue to create. And since we're created in his image, there is that creative gene in each and every one of us, and that, like you said, it finds expression in different ways. If you're a painter, or my brother, he's retired now, but he was a software engineer, and so that's more of a left brain, developing computer programs. But he found creativity, that he was very creative in the way that he would design the architecture of it. So God uses our personality, and he just redeems everything. But I look for the day when there's a greater level of freedom for God's kids to be who they are, and not to be afraid to risk, not to be afraid to create and put it out there. Because you write a song and you put it out there, it can be scary, right? Like one of the
especially
right?
if it's pre. Or if it's just, what if it's just a song that just comes to me and it doesn't fit into the construct of what people deem okay?
Right.
And that's a hard thing for musicians, especially. Like I loved Brian Head Walsh. Like when he went back to the band, the Lord told him, "You need to go back." And some people just lost their minds. Like they're like, how could you go back to the vomit? All this stuff, and I was like, guys, like, so what? Like, God's not offended. Like, I remember even like a band that's even further is Slipknot. They wear the masks and they got all the drums and stuff. And I remember this one time I stumbled on a live show of theirs. They were playing Jimmy Kimmel or something, and it was this song. And like, man, I just wept in the presence of God. And like I'm freaking out because I'm like, God, like, why am I feeling your presence so strong? And the Lord spoke to me. He said, "Do you hear my son's heart crying out for me, looking for love, looking for hope, having nothing? Do you hear this generation's heart? Do you see their hunger?" Like, and so many times we get offended at broken people, but it's like, no, like that's the best place they could be right now. Is broken and open. At least they're not lying. Like, like I'm so glad I don't live in the 1950s movie that we see, Leave It to Beaver. Like I wouldn't have made it, man. I wouldn't have made it. Like I'd be in jail or something. Cause like I couldn't exist in that type of construct. Like I love when I meet someone in a church who's just like angry and frustrated. I love that stuff. Like, and I love talking to people. And even sometimes I know like they might not hear what I'm saying, or they might not be in a place to like overcome it or whatever, but I still take the time because I'm just like, you know what? There's something in this for me too. Like, I'm not just some all awesome thing that gives out to people, you know, like even the most broken person has something to bring to the table. And it's like as a culture are shifting, I hope, and I believe that we're shifting in church culture more to the Father heart, more to the love, because, you know, we went through kind of like a really, really intense season of exposure. Which should mean we need more grace. It's like in that season, you know, like we were in Dunnville. I don't know if you've ever heard of the farm out there.
Yeah, I've been there.
Yeah. So I was at the farm, and Jeremy had put this box covered with wrapping paper, and basically it was to represent the presence of God as the present. It's our gift from the Father. And so he had it in the middle of the room, and Ben Johnston was like, oh, we should rip this open. And I was like, cool. So we start ripping it open with Jeremy, and I got to the inside of the box, and it was all garbage. And the Lord just speaks to me clear as day. He goes, take the garbage and pour it across the front of the stage. And I'm like, what? You know, because like I know in my head what is about to happen. There's going to be like 25% who are okay with it, 10% who don't know what to think, and there's probably another 35 running for the door or something, you know, like. So I start doing it, and I'm dumping garbage on the altar, right? And then I grab the mic, and it was like, guys, like, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'm trying to show you this is supposed to be the safe place where we come with all our stuff. And if we could really trust that we would be received and helped, I think the church would look a whole lot different. Like, really know, like, that if I came to the front and was like, hey, I'm struggling with same-sex attraction, that nobody would go, oh, you know what I mean? Like, that's the fear people have, is to be rejected by what they're going through, where they're at. But just because you're going through something doesn't define you.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, and even if you're the person who screws up 1,000,000 times, that doesn't define you. Love hopes all things, believes all things. That means every time God looks at you, he's looking at you with a new slate. He's not judging you on yesterday. Like, I had sorry.
No, keep going, man.
I got off on a stream there, but it's just like I had a powerful encounter where I saw like this water going off of like the edge of the earth type thing into like space. And I was like, God, what is that? And he said, that's tomorrow. Every day it's brand new. And I said, how's it brand new? He's like, the past is gone. It's gone. He's not remembering it. He's not staying there. He's not dwelling there. He stays in the present.
Yeah.
And so, like, we're the ones who are carrying all this stuff for no reason. And that's why, you know, I'm so happy for people like the Sanfords and then the Father Heart movement. Like this is, and it's more than a movement. It is. The Father Heart is. Like, it just is. You have to, it's not going to stop. It's going to get deeper and deeper. And every time you look at it, it's going to get deeper because he doesn't end.
Yeah, and the thing I kind of think about when I mentioned about before I came into this revelation of love, and the lens in which I even saw Scripture, because when you see through the lens of love, then I realized why Jesus came. He came to bring us home so that his Father could become our Father. He was an image of the invisible God, and you talk about brokenness. I mean, he just, you know, he had all the time in the world for the tax collectors and the sinners and the publicans and everybody else, and he drove the Pharisees crazy. But you know, he just said that it's not the healthy that need a doctor, and he wasn't saying that some need a doctor and some don't. He was just saying some people just don't know of their need. And I think I don't know what it is oftentimes when we look at Jesus and we look at his life. And we look at how he was okay for this woman of ill repute to, you know, weep and wash his feet at, you know, and this Pharisee is losing his mind. And I just totally believe that the Father is, because Jesus was the image of the invisible God, right? The exact representation of his being. So Jesus said, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. So it was like he was when he was there with the woman caught in adultery, when he was there with Zacchaeus, the swindler who, with the tax collectors, like he just hung out. He wasn't worried about his reputation.
No.
You know,
unashamed and unafraid.
Yeah. Yeah. So and that's what God's like.
Come on. And what does that look like today? And it's like there's so much desire to be right sometimes.
Yeah.
That I'm very slow, like, because even in me, I've had that a lot of times where I wanna be right. I want to know what it is. I want it figured out, Yeah. And it's like the Lord just always reminds me, like, it's more important to love.
Yeah.
It's like it just is. Like, I even remember coming to Stratford and really trying to push like this vision I had. And then the Lord spoke to me and he said, like, I didn't give you that vision so you would do it.
Yeah.
And I was like, that makes no sense. He said, no, I gave you the vision so you would watch it be birthed.
Wow.
So that you'd know I did it.
Mm.
And it's so hard to do because it's like we see something and we want to accomplish it instead of being at rest, taking a big breath, saying, okay, God, you know what you're doing. I'm going to trust you.
One of the things for me that, and of course with I have, at the core of my, in a sense, my brokenness, I suppose, that which God has redeemed, but is that A-type personality, that's really driven and performance oriented and takes responsibility for things. And so I remember the time in the love letter where our vision, and it still is, to see the love letter delivered to every person on the planet. People would ask me, so how's that going to happen? And then I'd try to feel like I needed to have this competent response, and it was just always my wife and I in our little house, and our basement was filled with Father's love letter stuff, like boxes all over the place. And I had absolutely no clue how God would do it. But when I tried to manage it, when I tried to give an answer that was competent, I just felt crazy and foolish. And so I stopped really telling people that. And I just remember the day when Papa God, Abba, he spoke to me from John 5:19 and 20. And he said, this is not your work. Read what Jesus said. Jesus said, the Son can do nothing of himself. He can only do what he sees his Father doing. For the Father loves the Son and shows them all that he does. That's the Father. And so he said to me, Barry, the vision that I've given you is not your vision. It's mine. He said, I've never, ever meant for that vision to become a burden for you, because it's just because you're part of the family business. I am showing you what I'm doing. But then he said, you're free to tell other people what you see me doing. And it was such a shift in me where I was able to be free from trying to carry the weight of the world on my shoulders with this worldwide global vision. And the first time I got Corey to put that into practice, right after that, it was like I got a spring in my step. I got a twinkle back in my eye, because I just wasn't carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And the first place I went after this happened was in Finland. And so when I got off the plane in Finland, first time there, put my feet on the ground, and I always declare the Father's love for a nation when I go there. And the host of the school that I was going to be speaking at said, so what's your vision? And I was just like a little boy with a big dad. Wasn't trying to be competent, or I just said, I believe that Papa wants to see the love letter delivered to every home in Finland. And so then he looked at me and he said, do you? And I said, yep. And he said, how's that going to happen? And, normally I would have tried to be competent. I said, I don't know. And I just smiled. A few days later, he came back to me and he said, you really believe that the Lord wants to see the love letter delivered to every home in Finland? And I said, yep. He said, well, you don't know this about me, but I'm not only a pastor, but I'm also the vice president of one of the largest Christian media organizations in Europe. And this Christmas, we're planning to do a door-to-door mailing to every home in Finland. Would you mind if we printed a full-color, two-sided version of the Father's love letter in Finnish and delivered it to every home? And so, that's just, it's just, it's really, we're just telling people what we see our dad doing, just like Jesus did. We were called into the ministry of Jesus. So how are we any different than Jesus? Jesus said the Son can do nothing by himself.
Yeah. And why would you want to?
Wow. How's it working out for you?
Like I I always tell people there's a third son in the prodigal son story, the one who
Yeah.
never left the house.
Yeah.
He didn't go
Absolutely.
into the field and he didn't go into the world. He stayed with his father.
Yeah.
And he only went where his father went.
Yeah.
That's where I want to find, like, I used to have this mission statement when I was all like young and crazy, where it was like, I want to look in Lucifer's eyes and say there's no part of him in me, right? Like, because
Mhm.
I wanted to overcome everything. And then all of a sudden it was like, nah, I want to know God to the point where I'm not surprised when I cross into the other realm.
Yeah.
I want to walk into heaven unsurprised. I want to know him so well that it feels familiar.
Yeah.
I want to be in the presence of dad. And like for me, like I had an encounter where I had completely walked away from everything. Was even like I was going to lose everything, my family, everything. And I was in a closet writing a song, and the father just showed up, and the only thing he would say to me over and over again was, "You're my son."
Mm.
And I just like I wept, man, like because I was like how am I your son? Like I'm not doing anything
Wow.
right. I'm doing everything I promised you I'd never do. I'm doing everything I hated my father for doing. I've done it all. Like what's left in me that you would want?
Mm.
And I remember just this little like song came out on my keyboard while I was in there because I was in there for 4.5 hours that
Wow.
day. Um, and the course was just really simple. It was like, if you can change me, you probably should. And
Mm.
if you could save me, I ask that you would, because I'm sinking fast and I don't really know what to do.
Wow.
But if you can change me, I ask that you do,
Wow.
because I had no strength left to change myself. I had
Wow.
nothing left to give. I tried my hardest and I did everything I swore I wouldn't do.
Mm.
And one of the things, so that continued for 9 months straight. Every day I'd go in there, and I just remember him just speaking into me over and over again. Even if you do it again, I'll come and rescue you. And
Wow.
even if you do it again, I'll come and rescue you. Like he was just solidifying that he is
Mm.
not going to give up on me just because I have this inability to follow these principles.
Yeah.
That he saw something beyond that.
Mm.
And that's why like it's a humbling thing to encounter love you don't deserve,
Mm.
but then to realize that you never did. It
No.
was never deserved.
No.
And it's like even us who are so limited in our view sometimes, we look in the eyes of our kids, you know. Like
Mm.
I've seen like even for me, like when I saw my kid for the first time, it was so crazy. Like I called my mom and was like, "Hey, I never loved you like you loved me. I'm sorry." Like cuz I didn't know how.
Yeah.
It's something I believe that that's when God reigns on the just and the unjust. Like
Mm.
when you have a kid, something you encounter something so unbelievable. Like I don't know how to explain it. And
Yeah.
like I know guys who are big tough dudes, but when they had kids, they became just mush balls. Like cuz like they just can't. Like it's their kid. Like, and I mean hardcore dudes who are still hardcore to the whole world, but like to their kid, they're just the softest place.
Yeah.
And I think that's the grace of God and the mercy of God for all
Mm.
mankind to experience part of who he is as a father,
Mm.
to that we would become fathers and mothers.
Mm.
So yeah, it's just been crazy for me, and like even John and Larry and you and different guys, like I've been so blessed to have friends who just refuse to give up on me.
Mm.
Just like and like not that they care about reputation or anything like that, but I really appreciate and honor them because
Mm.
they just loved me through the whole thing, man.
Mm.
Every step of the way. Never like reached out to me. They were always there. They were always like, it was unbelievable to see the body of Christ. Really, that's Jesus, man.
Wow. Well, and I think of King David and one of the, what made King David a man after God's own heart, and he's the one that said, if you were looking for burnt offerings, I'd bring it. If that's what you're looking for. But what you're looking for, the sacrifice that God accepts is a broken and a contrite heart.
Mm.
And it's just, I just believe the more that we, I, again, when Jesus talked about, it's not the healthy that need a doctor, a physician, it's the sick. And
Yeah.
it's just, are we okay to come to terms with our own brokenness and our own need? And I really believe that it's that need that when we come into that place where we know we need His love, that we are able to open our heart to receive what He's pouring out all the time. But if you go to a Mandarin buffet and you're stuffed full, you're not going to eat anything because there's no hunger. But
Yeah.
when we know of our need and our hunger, that's when Jesus said, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled."
Come on. And
Yeah.
like for me, like the last episode, me and Brandy were talking, and it was really deep. I check it out if you have time. But there's that verse that the Lord spoke to me when I was really messed up, where it was like, the bruised reed He won't break, and the smoldering wick He won't put out. And it
Yeah.
was like I was that. I was
Yeah.
just smoke. There was no flame left. There was nothing. But even there,
Yeah.
and like I remember after the 9 months, me and John went out to check out the farm, and in one weekend I had 13 people come up to me and tell me like God wants you to step out again and start sharing and stuff. And I was just like, in my head, I was like, what are you talking about?
Wow.
Like I wasn't being restored to do this again. Like, no, I'm chilling with God. Like, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Like, and I was seeing people just get rocked, like
Yeah.
constantly, like one on one, and we still do to this day. Like, we were just with a person like yesterday, and it was just amazing to see like God just opening their heart. And I can't wait to gather again with people. Like that's my, I love it. Like I remember one of the most powerful prophetic moments I ever had. I was in this little gathering, and we had prayed and like ministered to everybody. And so I said, like, is there anybody who wasn't ministered to? And then this little old lady, man, she's like, well, you didn't pray for me. The other guy did. And I was like, okay. So I went over to her, and the Lord told me very specific. He said, just tell her I'm her daddy and she's my princess.
Oh,
And I'm thinking in my head, like, great word, Dad. Thanks. Like, because we've just had details and all this crazy stuff. And all of a sudden, I go over to her and I say that, and she just broke. And she was crying so hard. Some ladies came around her and just held her. And I asked her, I said, why is this so, like, what's happening? Because it was a very big response.
wow.
And she shared with us that her dad had done things that weren't okay, and that her only cry was to know that God was her dad and that He saw her as a princess.
Mm.
And that was like the cry of her heart. And so what seemed to be the simplest thing for me was very real for her.
Mm.
And I love that about God. I love that He can just step in to a person's life with like 2 words.
Oh,
And that I don't have to be this extravagant, William Brenham, or and he was just being him,
yeah.
and that we can really just be who we are.
Mm.
There's no lack in the Father. He doesn't lack anything, and if it looks simple, there's still no lack.
No. I think that's one of the things too is that, like you're saying, just be yourself, right? It's just
Yeah.
that's when I think we have this still, because of the world that we live in, and now even more so with the multimedia and the internet and the comparisons and all these crazy things that we start to measure ourselves by, that we lose a sense of who we are. And I truly believe that the Father in His love wants to bring us back to the simplicity of just seeing ourselves through His eyes. The great commandment to love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your mind, and all your strength, and love your neighbor as yourself. We can only love others with the way that we're able to love ourselves, and it's not some new age mantra where you stare in the mirror and repeat after me kind of stuff. It is really just coming to agreement with who God thinks we are. I remember, and this is where again, kids, and this with it, you have in your little ones, they don't struggle with this a lot. And I remember at our church, there was friends of ours, that their son started to play in the adult worship band on drums when he was, I think, 5. And so he's just rocking it out. Like, I mean, he was so little that you couldn't see him behind the drums, but you heard the drums going, and they didn't dumb down the music for him. He was just amazing. So after what the worship said, I came up to him and I just looked him in the eyes. His name was Brandon. I said, "Brandon, you know what?" And he looked at me, "What?" I said, "You're awesome." He looked up at me and smiled and says, "I know." And now, when we become adults, if we said that, like, people would just, all the bells would go off, and people would say, how dare you say that? But I really believe that comes from the beauty of just being comfortable in your own skin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, even like I was trying to love on my daughter. I think it was like yesterday, and I was like, "Do you know what like my favorite thing to wake up to?" She's like, "Me," and I'm just like, "Well, yeah, thanks for ruining it."
Yeah.
But it's like she already knows, like she's and they know they can like climb on my head, like they know they have no fear of that, and it's so crazy because like the contrast from my life to their life. Like, if God can do that in one generation, I don't even know what my grandkids, like, their lives are going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Like I can't even imagine just the healing he's done in my lifetime to where, like, sometimes I'm sitting on the couch and my kids are all cuddled on me and I'm like, this never happened in my life with my dad, ever. Because you just didn't know. You didn't know what reaction would come. You just kind of kept your head down and like it was a different experience. And it's like all of a sudden I'm sitting here and my kids are like, they're just with me, and like I'm not even watching a cartoon, like I'm watching my Rust Valley car show and they're still just sitting there with me, and I'm just like, whoa, like, they're every 3 minutes, "Hey, can we change the channel, your dad," but sometimes I get my show in here and there, but it's like, it's so amazing to see things like that really just, I just look at it in awe. Like, and my girls, like my wife has footage where like she'll like sit on the stairs where they don't see her and just kind of film them being themselves. And like, my one daughter's like praying over the other one, "Can you feel his presence? Can you feel him?" And I'm just like, what is happening? Like, I didn't even know his presence till I was 20. Like, and it's like, they're like getting rocked in the glory, worshiping in their own way. And I'm my wife's sitting on the stairs, like sending me video, like, look what's happening. And it's like, even with all the stuff that I have, even with all the brokenness, even with all the issues, God's like being that good in my family. And it's like, it blows me away. Like, because, like so much of the jargon that I heard growing up in the system and things like that from like counseling and stuff was like, like it's going to pass on, all this stuff. And actually to see it end is just crazy. Like, my kids will never know what it's like to be beat up or have to be afraid. They're just not going to know what that's like. Like the worst is when I say go on timeout. Like, they're just like, they start crying, like, no, like crawling, and I'm sitting there like, remember, they don't know anything else. Like, because in my head I'm like, this is nothing. Like, but it's so cool that they don't even know anything else. And that's where I think that picture of the Father, like you were saying about being full, really, there's this place where we can be so full of him, we have no room for anything else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, this is one of the things, like what you're describing in your own family is just healthy family love, right? And oftentimes when we think about who we are in the kingdom, we think not that we're not part of an army or, but that's not who we are. We're God's kids, right?
Yeah.
How, 1 John 3:1, how great is the love the Father has lavished on us that we should be called the children of God, and that is what we are. And just being able to come into a place where we belong. Jesus even said in John 8, he said, a slave has no permanent place in the family, but a son belongs forever. and he wants it like, and that's where we're going. That's it's going more and more and deeper and higher and wider in belonging in family, where you can jump on our Abba. Like some people say, oh, you're being disrespectful, you're being too casual with God. He's our Abba. That's what it says in Romans 8 and Galatians 4, that he's our Abba, that we cry Abba. The very spirit within us says, you are our Abba, you're my Papa. I came for you. And that's what and one of the things as I've grown in this revelation myself, and I'm still, Jack Winter used to say, we're 3-year-olds teaching 2-year-olds, but I believe that the thing that I'm become valuing more and more is there's one thing for us to cry Abba to God, to say, you're my Father. And it's so healing and it's so amazing for us to do that. But when we start to tap in, how does that make him feel? Yeah. When we call him Papa, it's like, I don't know. I'm sure you had the same experience with your kids, but now with us, we have 3 grandchildren, and for each one of the grandchildren, the first time that they could call out Grandpa, it was like, man, it was music to my ears. It was like everything in me just was exhilarating. They're calling me Grandpa. They can actually say my name. And I believe that the Father feels that way towards us a bazillion times more.
That's why I love worship so much, and the songs and all the stuff that are coming out, because a lot of the time I'll like flip them, and I'll look at it as like him singing over us. Because sometimes then they mean so much more to me, like, and even like, just like, I remember when the Lord showed me, like, he longs for us.
Yeah.
Like, just to grab our attention. And it's not that he's in need of it. He's in no lack, but he desires it. Yeah. It's his heart's focus.
Yeah.
Like, for every person. And it blows me away. So it's like I remember a lady that I was sharing with, and she was in a rough place in life, been there for a long time, and the Lord, because at first she was coming to talk to me, and I was kind of in a rush, and the Lord just spoke to me, and he said, "This is my daughter," and I just realized, like, he was saying, like, give her whatever she needs, like. And so we sat and we talked for a good 2 hours. Like, everybody's waiting for me at the door to go to lunch, right? And I was headed to the door, and the assistant pastor came up to me, and she said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. That lady's such a time sucker." And my heart just broke, because I had just had this encounter where God's like, "This is my daughter." And I understand the pastor. Like, when you deal with people over and over again, there's times where it's like, I don't know what to do anymore. And so there was no judgment towards her. I understood she was just probably wanting to lock up and go home. She'd been there for hours. But for me, like, it made me recenter to where it was like, you know what? I don't care if I get back at 2 a.m. I don't care if every meeting we go to, we pray for every person. I just, like, whatever God's doing, I'm going to do. And there's no, because we don't understand sometimes just the value. Like, even I remember even with just you, when you came to the house, and the way that you were just like real with us and hanging out, and it really meant something, because it gave us hope that there was more than just this, culture of superstars and things like that. And I know you don't see yourself that way, but a lot of people do, like, see what God's doing in your life, and you give your time so freely. Like, I just asked you the other day, and you're like, yeah, whatever. And I'm just like, what? And it's like, you got your own broadcast to do. You and Larry are always on, like, I really appreciate your time. And plus you have kids and Ann and all that. And it's like, there's like a whole life, and you give of that, and it's just like, for me, like, the father heart isn't a message. And like, that's why I loved when John was sharing the other day about when he saw the father and the innocence he had, he almost wanted to protect the father. I was like, oh man, I melted. I was like, John, you never told me this. Like, this is good. It was so deep. And I was undone. And I've just been in this place of just, I want to know who he is. and I'm not really interested in being known until I know.
Mm.
And even then, I don't need to be known because I'm known. You know, like, and that's why even with this, like, I'm literally just trying to build a library that exists that
Yeah.
people can go to YouTube and find more than trying to get a bunch of views and stuff. Like, I'd be happy if 20 years from now some kid watches it and hears something that changes his life.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
and
because
yeah, and I think this is where, to me, do it for the one, right? It when we focus on the one in front of us, right? It just simplifies life. We don't have to, like, because how it is on social media. It's
yeah,
all the likes and all the shares and all the comments and all.
insights and
Oh my goodness, it can just make you. We've been in this world for 22 years, and being a numbers guy, I have to be really careful that I don't get distracted or measure the value of something that I do based on the metrics, and yeah, I just believe that it's simple. It's as Jesus said in John 15, as the Father loved me, I've loved you. Remain in my love. Just stay there. And it's just in the way
Whew.
that we can just give away that which we first received. That's all it is. And I honestly, again, the older I get, in many ways, I feel the simpler things maybe they need to be, because maybe my mental capacity is starting to break down, and I wouldn't be surprised, just ask my wife. But I just believe the kingdom is all about receiving, as Jesus, he sent out his disciples to cast out devils and heal the sick and raise the dead. He just said, freely as you receive, freely give. And when we come to a place in our Christian walk where we just receive everything, every good and perfect gift that comes down from the Father of lights, when we are in a place of absolutely receiving everything from heaven, that is our birthright, that is our inheritance, that is in the very DNA of our new creation that joined with Jesus. And all we do is just give away that which we continually receive. Easy
Come on.
peasy.
Yeah. Easy peasy. That's a good way to end it. Go on. If you guys don't know, it's fatherheart.tv is Barry's website. You guys can connect. There's a ton of stuff there too, right? Like tools and all sorts of stuff. Online classes and things too, right? I
Yeah.
saw like tab. I was looking through the tabs, so I always check out the websites just in case, you
Yeah.
want to know a little bit. But yeah, fatherheart.tv. If you haven't heard the Father's Love Letter, I go check it out. It's pretty cool. Is there like, where's like your Father Heart Love Letter? Like, do you have a YouTube channel that it's on?
Yeah, fathersloveletter.com is the website. We also have a YouTube channel, Father Heart. It's youtube.com/fatherheart. And so we've got all the different versions of the Father's Love Letter that we've created over the years, plus some other stuff. But yeah, we've got over the years, we've got and then of course we've got Father Heart on Vimeo as well, and
Yeah, I
different
saw
places.
that the ones on the website were from Vimeo, so I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, Vimeo's like the quality's unbelievable. I love those guys.
Oh yeah, it's great. I mean, but the funny thing, as we talked about, I think in the green room, that the biggest like we've been doing this for 22 years, so they're over that span that we've had lots of views and stuff. But the ones that are actually getting the hits now and the views now are ones that are not connected with us at all, but they've just used
Reposted.
reposted, and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
It's crazy. Like, I literally saw one today that was over 9 million. And I'm just
Yeah,
like, come on, that's so cool.
yeah,
And I think that we're going to see like more and more stuff like that, like where it's not usual. It comes out from an unusual place.
yeah.
Cuz we're peculiar people, man. Like, just as general. Look at some of the stuff humans invent. We're weird people, man. Like like I still want to get the salt shaker shotgun
Yeah.
cuz like for the flies, have you seen that?
I've seen it. I've looked at it on Amazon because I was thinking of trying to buy one.
Oh, I want to get the big one. I want the big one, yeah. I think Elon Musk should make one, maybe like a rapid fire salt gun, because it does like the wide pattern, so you get the flies right out of the air. But yeah, but I might be a redneck. So
Well, I've looked on Amazon at them as well. I just don't think my wife would appreciate me firing them off inside the house and having salt go everywhere.
you know, it's such a little bit of salt, though. You know.
Well, tell that to my wife.
All right, deal. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time, man. That was great, and
My joy.
really good to just have you speak into things and even the media side of things. And another guy. Do you remember Andrew, the other intern who was with
Yes,
me?
of course. Yeah.
Yeah, he actually started this Christian memes thing, and it's blown up. And
Yeah, I
he
follow
just-
it.
Yeah, he just does funny stuff that makes you kind of laugh at our culture, but some of them like millions of he's doing great. It's just
Wow.
awesome. Like
That's so good.
yeah, like the funniest thing for me was like the video I got the most attention was I was at Canadian Tire and there was a big teddy bear and I had the idea to put like a little teddy bear under it and pretend like it was giving birth. And that got 2.5 million views.
Wow, there you go.
We were dying. I'd had TikTok for one day
Wow.
and it was just like blew up. Yeah, no, it was crazy. I haven't done like videos since. I've been so just like chill, but it was funny.
That's awesome. I love
But
it.
I'm ridiculous. But thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
My joy, my brother. Thanks for having me.